Imagine you're stranded in the middle of the ocean, the salty wind biting your face, your stomach growling louder than the crashing waves. You're a pirate days away from land and the food barrels are empty. What do you eat? Bread? Meat? No, you'd be shocked. Pirates ate some of the weirdest, creepiest, and downright disgusting things just to stay alive. Today I'll take you through 20 shocking foods pirates ate at sea, and trust me, the deeper we go the stranger it gets. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because the more we grow together, the more incredible stories I can bring you. Now, let's set sail into the strangest pirate kitchens in history. Slippery eels, the slimy survival snack. Forget clean grilled fish. Pirates often had to wrestle with living, squirming eels. Imagine grabbing what looks like a wet rope that refuses to stay in your hand, covered in more slime than a jar of mucus. That was dinner. These snake-like creatures hid near coastlines, and pirates didn't have fancy fishing gear. Nope, they used bare hands, sharp sticks or hooks made from scrap metal. Hunting eels was like a slimy game of tug-of-war, usually done at night when the sea was darkest. Preparation a nightmare. The skin had to be ripped off, the mucus scraped away, and by the time it hit the fire the pirate deck smelled like a swampy barbecue pit. But once roasted, the eel meat was rich in fat and protein, energy that kept pirates rowing and fighting for hours. Pirates valued eels because unlike giant sea monsters, anyone could learn to catch them. But every bite was a reminder of desperation, because nobody ate eels for pleasure. Sea urchins, spiky ocean snacks. If eels weren't gross enough, pirates also turned to little spiky nightmares called sea urchins. Imagine reaching for your food and ending up with hands that look like you high-fived a cactus. These pin-covered balls clung to rocks near the shore. Pirates used knives to pry them off, carefully cracking them open like armored eggs. Inside, a slimy orange-brown mush that tasted like if the ocean itself melted into pudding. Did it taste good? Not at all. Pirates mixed the gooey flesh into stews just to mask the flavor. But sea urchins were everywhere, cheap, available, and surprisingly nutritious. To starving pirates, they weren't a delicacy. They were edible vitamins hiding behind armor. Sea cucumbers, the ocean's rubber pickles. Now imagine pulling what looks like a giant sausage or soggy hot dog from the seafloor. That's a sea cucumber. Soft, slimy, and about as appetizing as biting to a wet leather shoe. The good part, they didn't run, they didn't fight back, they just sat there, crawling slowly across the sand. Pirates could scoop up dozens during a single stop. Raw, they were unbearable. Cooked, they were slightly less terrible. But dried sea cucumbers, those were survival gold. Once preserved, they became nutrient-packed strips that could last weeks without spoiling. On a ship where food rotted fast, this was like striking treasure. For pirates, sea cucumbers weren't about taste, they were about survival. When every other food ran out, these ugly creatures kept men alive just long enough to raid again. Jellyfish, desperation on a plate. Here's where survival got truly painful. Pirates sometimes turned to jellyfish, the floating blobs of pain. Imagine being so hungry you risk stinging tentacles just for a mouthful of watery food. Catching them was easy, they drifted helplessly into nets. But cooking them was crucial because raw jellyfish were poisonous. Pirates boiled them for hours until the stings broke down, leaving behind something with the texture of overcooked noodles soaked in seawater. The cruel irony, jellyfish had almost no nutrition, they were 99% water. But when your stomach feels like it's eating itself, even chewing tasteless goo is better than nothing. Pirates didn't eat jellyfish because they wanted to. They ate them because the alternative was worse. That's just the beginning. And trust me, it only gets more disturbing from here. Because next, pirates turned to food that didn't even come from the ocean. But before we reveal what was hiding in their very own ships, make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the wildest survival foods coming up next. Sawdust bread, the ship's fake loaf. Imagine being so hungry that a piece of bread, no matter how stale, feels like treasure. But what if that bread wasn't even real? Pirates sometimes made loaves mixed with ground sawdust, just to stretch the flour longer. One bite was like chewing sandpaper. The sharp wooden bits scraped tongues, chipped teeth, and caused bleeding gums. But pirates still forced it down. Why? Because hunger doesn't care if food is edible, it only cares if your stomach feels full. The saddest part, many pirates got sick from eating this bread. Their bellies swelling, their insides torn by the very wood they swallowed. But to starving men, even pain was better than the ache of an empty stomach. Maggot-infested hardtack, the biscuit of the damned. Now picture this: a thick, hard cracker called hardtack. It was supposed to last months, but after weeks at sea, it came alive, with wriggling white maggots and beetles crawling out of its holes. The crunch you heard wasn't just the biscuit breaking, it was insects snapping between your teeth. Pirates didn't even bother scraping them out anymore. They just eat everything together, convincing themselves the bugs were extra protein. For new recruits, the first bite was horrifying. But for seasoned pirates, it was just another day. They laughed, saying, "Why waste energy picking them out? They're part of the meal." That's how far survival twisted their sense of normal. Cockroaches, the reluctant protein. If maggots weren't enough, ships swarmed with cockroaches. At night, the decks crawled, the barrels rattled with tiny claws, and men felt legs scurrying across their faces as they slept. At first, pirates hated them. But when food grew scarce, even cockroaches became dinner. Roasted over a fire, they crunched like burnt shells, leaving behind a bitter, smoky taste. Pirates joked they were the sea's peanuts, but behind the jokes was shame. No man dreamed of becoming a pirate just to gnaw on cockroaches. Yet hunger doesn't wait for dignity. Rats, the desperate delicacy. Rats thrived aboard pirate ships, stealing crumbs and gnawing at ropes. Normally they were pests. But in starvation they became prey. Pirates set traps, slammed barrels shut, and sometimes even chased them across the deck with daggers. Cooked over open flames, the rats sizzled like tiny chickens. The meat was greasy, gamey, and stringy, but edible. Some pirates even grew to crave it after long voyages. But catching rats was more than food, it was survival justice. Because in eating them, pirates felt they were fighting back against the creatures that stole their supplies. And here's where our tale takes an even darker turn. Because when rats, roaches, and worms were gone, pirates didn't always stop at animals. But before we sail into those shadows, if you're still here with me, raise your flag and hit that subscribe button. Join this crew of legends, because the darkest meals of pirate history are still waiting ahead. Boiled leather, eating their own boots when food was gone, pirates turned to the last thing they had on their bodies, their own boots. Made of animal hide, leather could be boiled for hours until it softened into a chewy, rubbery sludge. The broth tasted like bitter earth, thick with oil and filth. Eating it stripped the lining from the stomach, sometimes making men vomit, sometimes giving them a few extra hours of life. The sight of pirates huddled around a pot of boiling boots was the ultimate picture of desperation. They weren't men anymore, they were shadows clinging to survival. Candle wax, the last bite of hope. When even boots were gone, pirates tore chunks from candle wax. Those pale sticks of tallow weren't just for light anymore, they became food. Made of animal fat, wax filled the mouth with greasy lumps that refused to break down. Pirates chewed until their jaws ached, swallowing with difficulty, fighting against choking. Some flavored the wax with seawater, pretending it was broth. It wasn't nourishment, it was hope. Hope that something in their bellies would keep them alive one more night. Salt water and madness, desperate men turned to the ocean itself. A few drank seawater, believing it could save them. Instead, it killed faster, shriveling organs, burning throats, and driving minds into madness. Some swore they saw mirages on the horizon after drinking it. Ghost ships, golden islands, loved ones calling their names. The sea fed them visions before it claimed their lives. Cannibalism, the final horror, and when nothing else remained. When the rats were gone, the boots eaten, the wax swallowed, the seawater burning their veins, there was only one thing left. Some tales are whispered in sailors' taverns, stories of men who cast lots with dice and the one who lost became the next meal. Flesh roasted over fire, bones gnawed under lantern light. Not every pirate story admits this truth, but the silence itself speaks volumes. When men were trapped between hunger and death, the line between human and beast was devoured. Silence, a slow creak of wood, the sea breathes heavy, and so, behind the myths of gold and glory, piracy was also the art of survival. Not just against the law, the sea, or the cannon's roar, but against hunger itself. Their treasure was never the jewels in a chest. It was the hope of one more sunrise, one more meal, one more day alive. Lantern flickers, heartbeat slows, and that, my friends, is the untold tale of what pirates truly ate when the world gave them nothing. Glow drums, the sea is calm, but heavy with memory. They sang songs of overflowing rum, roasted hogs, and tables stacked with tropical fruit. Tales told in taverns painted pirates as kings of excess, feasting under starlight, laughing with greasy fingers and gold teeth shining. But the truth was darker. Behind every meth of indulgence lay the shadow of starvation. The ocean was not a banquet hall, it was a tomb. For every night of rum-soaked laughter, there were weeks of hunger, men chewing leather and bone, eyes hollow, voices weak. For every story of stolen treasure, there were whispers of dice cast in silence, choosing who would live and who would be consumed. Piracy was never just about freedom, it was survival at sea, the kind of survival that strips a man to his barest form, revealing not who he dreamed to be, but who he was when all else was gone. Some say that's why their ghosts still linger, why sailors swear they see shadows moving on the waves, hear whispers carried in the foam. Because those who died starving, betrayed by the very sea they thought they'd mastered, never truly left. Waves crash, then silence, and so, when you think of pirates, don't just see the gold, don't just hear the laughter, see the hunger, hear the growl of an empty belly, feel the desperation of men who would sell their souls for one final bite. Because in the end, the greatest treasure a pirate could ever hold was not silver, or gold, or rum, it was life itself. One more sunrise, one more day at sea, one last breath beneath the endless sky. The lantern flickers out. Black screen. This was the untold truth of pirate survival, where legends of feasts died, and the reality of hunger lived forever.